Bruce, thank you so much for coming on Sips of Grace today. I am so honored to have you on my show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
I heard your story first, I think on YouTube, and it is an amazing, amazing story. I'm so excited to share it with my audience. You had a near-death experience and were miraculously healed by God following a really tragic accident. And it's just so evident how God is working through you and your ministry. And so I'm just so excited to share that with everybody. To start, can you take us back to before your accident? What was your life like? What was your faith life like? And anything you'd like to tell us leading up to the accident?
Sure. So I grew up in a home where my parents both definitely believed in God. My mom would have called herself a Catholic. My dad would have called himself a Lutheran, but we didn't attend church except like Christmas, Easter. So I didn't come from a super spiritual background, if maybe that's the right words. But my parents both believed in God. They both had very, very hard childhoods. And so I grew up in a home that was pretty dysfunctional, alcoholic father, um, verbal abuse, physical abuse. Again, when you're growing up and you don't realize why people are the way they are and the things that they've gone through to make them the way they are, um, it can be confusing as a kid for sure. But so anyway, just grew up in that kind of a lifestyle, home environment. Um, Made a lot of bad choices, bad decisions. I watched my parents self-medicate their pain, inner woundedness. Always fighting. Just grew up in that. So carried around a lot of baggage, and ended up getting married in my mid 20s, hoping to. I remember even telling my new bride at the time that we are going to make the happy family I didn't have as a kid. And I really believed that and thought that that's what I was going to do. But I brought so much baggage into it that was impossible. And so just going from one thing to one thing, next thing to the next thing in life, trying to make myself feel better. I think like a lot of people do, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever, money, whatever whatever I thought could make me feel better. And we got married, and I thought that was going to do it. And then I realized, that was still wounded, and then we started having kids, and I didn't want to be a drug and alcohol parent like I grew up with. And so I made a bunch of promises that I couldn't keep. And so just again, just one thing and one thing and one thing. And I turned, I was just about 30, and I remember um, thinking that I had tried, used, experimented with every single thing in the world that I thought could possibly give me peace or make me happy, and I only had one thing left. I had this six-figure money, the six-figure annual salary number stuck in my head, and for whatever reason, I believed that if you could make this certain six-figure number, you're going to be happy. And because I believe God has a sense of humor, at 29 and a half years old, He allowed me to make that number. And it was literally the last thing on my list that I thought could make me happy. And I was very, very disappointed and sad when I didn't. I mean, yeah, we bought a new car and we're going to build a new house and blah, 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 blah. But it didn't, I realized it wasn't, and that was it. There was nothing left. And on my 30th birthday, I literally, drunk in a resort place. But I remember just looking at so drunk, I was looking at my phone and looking at uh, I had to get up my driver's license and my phone and compare them back and forth to verify it really was my birthday because that's how trashed I was. And I was sitting there looking at it going, yep, it's my 30th birthday and I'm absolutely miserable. Everything I thought could make me happy doesn't work. And so I just resigned myself. I remember flying back with a bad hangover. And I remember being in the plane and going, okay, I am just going to make the best of this miserable life because that's what it is. And just do the best that I can with it. I really much just pretty much had that frame of mind at that point. My wife's mom got sick. My wife's only child. We lived a couple hours, 2.5 hours south of here. We're both born and raised in central Wisconsin. We moved to southern Wisconsin, started our family. I was running a large business down there for the owner of the business, but I ran it for him. This portion of his business anyway. And so anyway, her mom got sick. We moved home. And after we moved home, I started our own business. Um, God blessed it greatly. We bought this 40 acres, built our house in the middle of it. I took $100,000 worth of tools, put them on a service truck. I'd been raised in a diesel repair shop. My dad was a truck driver, and then he got a lot of drunk driving accident tickets and different things, and he had lost his license, so he started a diesel repair shop in our backyard, so he wouldn't have to drive to go to work. And so I started working for my dad at 10 years old in that diesel repair shop. So I grew up working as a diesel mechanic, literally. So and I was running a diesel business for a guy with 17 employees in southern Wisconsin on the state line. Her mom got sick. We moved back, bought this land, built this house, started that business, and I was just traveling around Wisconsin doing on-site diesel repair. After having 17 employees, I decided I didn't want any employees at all. I was just sick of dealing with that, and I just decided I was going to do my own thing and be my own, just me and Lori. She'd do like the paperwork, and I'd do the mechanical work, and so that's what we were doing, and that's what was kind of leading up to the accident.
Okay. And did you have kids at this time?
Yeah, we actually had 4 children when the accident happened. They were little, like, we have twins in the middle. We have 4 kids, but we had twins in the middle, so we had 4 kids in just under, like, under 4 years or whatever it was, so because
Yeah.
of the twins in the middle, yeah.
Yeah. What was your faith life like at this time?
Well, I had only, like I said, I grew up in a family where we didn't attend church regularly, but, I did go to a Sunday school one time as a 5-year-old kid because I was being babysat by my dad's mom and dad. And I heard about in that Sunday school class, they told about the story where Jesus is in a place and the parents are bringing their children to have Jesus hug them and bless them. Just paraphrasing, but the disciples get mad. They say, "Get these kids out of here." Jesus rebukes them, says, "Let the children come unto me." So that was the Bible school's, Sunday school story that morning. And the Sunday school teacher told me, first time I'd ever heard about the concept of God, told me that Jesus was God, that he was real, that he loved us. I had heard the word Jesus a lot, but I didn't know it was, a person. So much less God. And so it planted that seed in the back of my head. But then he went too far and he said something along the lines of that um, Jesus loves kids so much that he protects them, or something along those lines. And I, at that point in my life, had been repeatedly molested for over a year. All the bad stuff other bad stuff that already happened. And when he said that Jesus loves kids so much that he protects them, I immediately thought to myself as a 5-year-old kid, it's a Santa Claus story. It's made up. And I remember pushing the piece of paper away that we were coloring on in that little Sunday school spot and thinking it's just a made up story. Fast forward several months, I was having a really bad night in my life and I was scared. I was feeling dirty. In my house, we did not get hugged or lovingly touched. And if that is the environment you grew up in, you crave physical touch. You don't even realize why. And so some bad things happened and some worse things were about to happen. And I, laying on top of the bed, I just called out, remembered the story of what the Sunday school teacher said about Jesus. And as a 5.5-year-old little kid, I just said, like, as a doubting Thomas, literally, uh, I just said, Jesus, if you're real, prove it. Come and hug me, like you did those kids in that story, because that's what I wanted was comfort. And I could look anybody now and tell them I was picked up off that bed and I was given a physical hug. And it was way more than that. It was like being dipped in liquid love. I'm 55. I've never again ever felt that depth, quality, magnitude of love. I think it knocked me out. It was so powerful. And I woke up the next morning contemplating, thinking about what was happening and what was about to happen. There was nobody in that room besides me. The door was shut. Um, Thinking about what had happened, about saying, Jesus, if you'll hug me, and knowing that I got a hug and feeling that love, and the sun coming through the window the next morning, waking me up, and knowing that the bad things that were about to happen didn't happen. And for me, I just settled it that Jesus was real. Um, I wish I could say that I told people that Jesus was real. I wish I could say that I was telling people what had happened, but I didn't. I kept it as like a dirty secret, because I don't have to admit that I was molested, but I have to admit what I did because I was molested. And this is all ugly, yucky story. So I just kept it to myself. And I never told anybody. It was never talked about past that night ever again for a long time. And then I was dating an atheist bartender. We got an argument about God. I told her I knew God was real. And I ended up telling her first time as an adult telling anybody this thing, and she ended up she ended up receiving Jesus, not because I didn't lead her through a prayer or
Wow.
anything. I just told her the story because she wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't want to tell her, but she wouldn't stop. So I told her, and I remember saying, if I tell you this, will you just shut up and just drop it? Because I don't want to talk about it. And I told her, she started crying. Um, she ended up having her own encounter with God, unbeknownst to
Wow.
me at that moment, at that time. But she ended up receiving Jesus herself, and we were married shortly thereafter, and that's how I married Lori, and we've been together for over 30 years. Like I said, we started having kids. So she wanted to start going to church. We got married. We started going to church. She quit her job that she was working at. She wanted to start working at the church. So she started working at the church, and I used to joke, and I said, I was dating an atheist bartender, but she turned into church lady from Saturday Night Live on me. And so, uh,
That's great.
yeah, so I mean, it just we attended church and stuff, and I was still struggling with lots of issues, but God just kept calling out to us, reaching out to us, being faithful, loving on us. We moved back home, like I said. We started this business. She started working at this church here in this town, or a church here in this town where we live. Our kids were attending that school. Um, and at 35 years old, God finally got me sober. And so that year, we started having Bible studies and small groups at our house. Just I don't know, she was already working at the church, but we became more and more active. And it was actually then that following year, no, 2006, that the accident actually happened. So I was actually in a really great spot, spiritually. I just finished 10 years of motorcycle racing. So I was I guess I finished racing at 30. Accident happened at 36. So I've been out of motorcycle racing for 6 years, but I still, uh, super fit, super active. Um, Things were going wrong really good right before the accident happened.
Sure, yeah. And tell us, so take us to the day the accident happened and walk us through how that came to be.
Yeah, so it was actually November 16th, 2006. It was the Thursday before deer hunting. Deer hunting's a big deal in Wisconsin. Um, it was cold. We had snow already. I was working at a shop about an hour south of here. It was a 3-day job, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Um, I had finished, well, I finished the job Tuesday morning, went to that job, took that job apart. So I charged a lot per hour because I didn't do maintenance. I didn't change tires or change oil or anything like that. I specialized in runability and overhaul, which is, overhaul the engines, like rebuild the engine. That's something that happens a lot in big diesel engines. So I specialized in that. So because of that, I charge a lot per hour. Because of that, I mean, the clock is ticking, the money's going the whole time I'm there. So they always want me to be there the least amount of time, so it costs them less money. So they always usually would put another mechanic with me to make the job go faster. So this job, I was working with this guy named Leonard. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we were working together. He was like basically my helper, somebody that I'd known. I happened to have known him forever, for a long time, since I was probably like an early teen, because he used to bring his logging truck to my dad's shop, and I used to work on that guy's logging truck in my dad's shop as a kid. So I've known him forever. Um, so we were working together Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We get to the end of the job Thursday, and there was just two things left to put the truck com- to complete the truck. I was called in because the engine was leaking coolant. It had an antifreeze leak. And so the last thing to do was, Leonard was going to put the passenger side front wheel on and the engine mount air cleaner. Those last two things left to do. So, um, it's running. The truck is, in order to test the repair to make sure it's no longer leaking, it's running 15 or 20 minutes, whatever it was. It's hard to get it up to temperature because it's cold in the shop, whatever. It's not under load. So we're putting my tools away. I'm just down to my last couple tools to put away. I'm minutes from walking out the door when Leonard comes up, taps me on the shoulder, and he says, "Hey, before you go, would you look at one more thing?" I'd left my house that morning at 6 a.m. I got to the job site approximately 7 a.m. I remember looking up, I didn't answer him. I looked up the clock, and I remember it said 6:10. There was a clock on the wall here above the bench. It said 6:10. And I remember thinking, if I leave right now, it's going to be a 13-hour and 10-minute day by the time I get home. And I was used to working 12s. It's pretty common. That's what I did, was work a lot of 12s. So, but I was already at it's already like over a 13-hour day, and he's wanting me to work more. And I'm looking at the clock, doing the math in my head. He could see my wheels turning, and he said, "No, no, no." He said, "I don't want you to have to stay late It's only 13 hours. I don't want you to have to stay late. He goes, just want you to look at one more thing. And he said, you don't have to fix it, just diagnose it. And then we'll order the parts and I'll have you come back at a later time, something like that. So he, I said, okay. Um, so if you're looking at one of these, a big semi, what they call Class 8 trucks, the biggest trucks out on the road, this was a logging truck because Peterbilt was the brand, a big rectangular truck garage. This Peterbilt's all the way in the back. If you look at one of these big trucks, there's always a big front bumper on these trucks. The older ones is usually metal. The new trucks is plastic, whatever. But there's always a gap, obviously, between the bottom of the bumper and the ground. If you were to get on your knees and look underneath the truck from the front to the back, what you see is the lowest thing to the ground in these trucks is the front axle. The only reason why is here's the two front wheels. The axle attaches and it just drops down. It goes from side to side. It's just a big steel I-beam that holds those two front wheels. So I'm not sure what the weight of this truck was, but on that front axle and the weight of the two front tires, 5 to 6 tons of weight, so 10 to 12,000 pounds of weight on the two front tires. Leonard had placed the jack underneath that axle, the big steel I-beam on the passenger side, jacked it up, removed the wheel. So he wanted me to look at oily spot in the front of the engine. I looked underneath there and I saw that there was a jack holding up the axle, but there was no safety equipment, no jack stands. Um, you want to jack it up with the jack. This is the right way to do it, and then let the weight off the jack, put it on a block or some kind of jack stands to hold the weight. He didn't do that. I saw that he didn't do that, and I was like, it's been on this jack for 3 days. It's been running for 15 or 20 minutes. Big deal. I'm good. So I got in this tool called the creeper. Um, it's a thing that just mechanics lay on to go underneath vehicles. And the thing with tools, I had $100,000 worth of tools in my truck because expensive tools work really good and cheap tools just plain don't. And this creeper was plastic. It had little wheels. It was the board of the creeper was a plastic hollow core. It was hollow plastic and had four little small plastic wheels. I remember looking at it and think I don't even want to get on it. It's just going to make me mad because it's a piece of junk. It was his creeper. He was going underneath it out. And like I said, I looked in the back of my truck and here's my creeper with great big wheels and a steel framework. And I remember thinking, I just wanted to go home and eat supper, and I didn't want to take the time to get mine out. So I got on his creeper and went underneath the truck. And the reason why it's a big deal that I used his plastic hollow core creeper versus my snap-on heavy duty built steel frame creeper is when the truck ended up falling on me and the axle fell through the middle of my body, I ended up like an inch thick on one side and maybe 2 inches thick on the other. But the thickness of his plastic creeper just collapsed to nothing. And if I would have been on my snap-on creeper with a steel framework, right there's a cross member, it would have, instead of crushing me to an inch thick, it would have sheared me in two pieces and I would have been taken off from underneath that truck into two parts as opposed to just being crushed in the middle and flat. So it's just a little detail, but that little detail literally is the difference between being crushed down an inch or being chopped in half. So I get on his plastic creeper, I go underneath the truck, I'm laying directly underneath that axle that's held up by a jack over here. I'm looking at the bottom of the running engine. I thought I came to the conclusion of what I thought was leaking, where it was leaking. I yelled out to Leonard. I said, shut it off. I don't need it running anymore. He got up inside the truck. These big trucks have airbags, like kind of shift when you get in them. It's normal. He's getting in it. The truck kind of shifts above me. But I saw movement over here in the peripheral vision of my left eye. And I turned my head just in time to see that the jack that was holding up that axle slipped out and was rocking because when he got in the truck and it shifted everything. And before I could do anything, the jack shot out and that 5 to 6 tons of weight fell to the cement. But the problem was I was between it and the cement. So the driver's side wheel is still on. I'm in the middle and it hit the cement over here on the passenger side. So if you can imagine 10 to 12,000 pounds of steel hitting the cement, it was this loud, you know, explosion noise. But for me, the weird thing was laying underneath that thing when that thing fell and I heard that loud steel on cement noise. I heard it, but there was also like this, it's hard to describe, but it's like a swirling liquid noise. Come to find out, swirling liquid noise was me because when the truck fell on me, it fell through the middle of my, like basically between the bottom of my ribs, my pelvic. It fell through the middle of that, and you got a lot of liquid in there. And so when it fell through the middle, blood on impact, blood shot out of my mouth like this. I don't know, maybe like the size of a golf ball or something. But this a bunch of blood came out of my mouth on impact when this thing fell through me, and the blood shot out. And I remember even before I felt pain or anything, I just said, Lord, help me. And I remember saying it the second time, Lord, help me. When I say Lord, I'm referring to Jesus. And I don't know what, I guess it makes sense why, but I went right back to thinking about when I was a little kid and I said, Jesus, if you're real, give me a hug. And I mean, literally, that's exactly what I thought about. And I said it a second time. When I say Lord, it's Jesus. So I said, Lord, help me. Jesus, help me. And I looked down at that point. The axle's like this tall. It had fallen all the way through me. and I look on my left side, and there's maybe about an inch of space between the bottom of the axle and the cement, because the axle's on the ground just right over here, but it's coming up at an angle because that wheel's on. So maybe I'm like 2 inches thick on this side or something, double. I was thinner than my spine in the middle because my L4, L5 vertebrae, according to the radiology reports, uh, straight through from where I used to have a belly button, don't have it anymore, but straight through the back, L4, L5 vertebrae, and those, according to the radiology reports, were spider cracked and D shaped. So I was just a little bit thinner than my spine in the middle. So when that truck fell, it collapsed the creeper. The plastic hollow core creeper just flattened out to like nothing. It fell down and just cracked those two vertebrae just enough. But everything in here was like crushed, destroyed. The pain was off the charts. It hurt so bad. It was just nuts. Leonard got down out of the truck. He never did shut the engine off. He got down out of the truck. The bumper's just back behind my head. It's on the ground on the passenger side. Because that wheel's the one that's off. The passenger side fuel tank is on the ground, caved in. There's a gap over here behind my head where between the bottom of the bumper and the ground, and I'm looking back out from underneath that bumper because it's just behind me, and his so Leonard's face is just back here, and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me, and when he saw that my body was crushed and flat, he went into shock. A lot of times people see scary stuff and they can go into shock and freeze, and that's exactly what he did. He just froze up. So I'm looking at him and he's looking at me and he's not doing anything, and I just started saying, Leonard, call 911, please. And I just kept saying it. And I was telling him to shut it off because the engine was still running. He never did shut it off when the truck fell on me. Now so it's vibrating on me. I'm saying shut it off, shut it off. And he's just looking at me. So he ends up shaking out of it. He shuts it off. He calls 911. And I remember him saying that the truck fell on a guy and he's crushed in half, was his words. He goes and gets a jack. It's a volunteer fire department in the middle of nowhere. He goes and gets the jack, and he is going to try and get the truck off of my body. But the problem is the axle's on the ground, so there's no way to put the jack underneath the axle. So he's trying to figure out where he's going to put the jack. So instead, there's this big, the suspension for the truck, side view for you. There's this big curved leaf spring on each side that axle attaches to. So he slipped the jack up underneath the arch of that leaf spring, and he's trying to jack it up on the arch, which is not what you want to do. You want to jack something on a flat spot, not an arch, so it doesn't slip. And I'm begging him, saying, don't jack it up there, because I knew it wasn't secure. And I just kept saying, please don't jack it up there. And he kept telling me it's the only place I've got. There is no other place. So he's pumping the little handle. I'm watching the jack slip, and then all of a sudden it caught. So now the truck starts going up off of my body, and he just kept jacking until the axle was lifted off my body. Now I'm able to see my body like top to bottom for the first time, because the axle was so tall that when it fell through me, I could only see ribs up before. But as soon as he jacked it up off my body, I could see top to bottom. And when I looked at the middle across where the axle had fallen, it was flat. And so literally my work uniform went to the edge of my ribs, fell straight back along my spine, basically, and came back up my pelvic. And when I looked at it, there was nothing in real life to compare it to at all. There's nothing. So the only thing my brain could pull up was cartoonish. It looked like cartoons from like a little kid. And I'm literally looking at myself, thinking to myself, it looks like a cartoon. And that the next thought was, there's so much pain. And the next thought was, there's no way anybody should be able to look at themselves like this, or there's no way I was going to live. In my mind, I'm thinking, you're dead. And I'm looking at it and there's no way you can live through this. And the other thing was, when he took the truck off of my body, I had this incredible pain, but when you think, right, he's going to take it off, it's going to feel better. When he took the truck up off my body, it actually got worse, because I didn't know at the time, but we found it later. I had 5 places that major arteries were severed when the truck fell on me. And when he took the truck up off my body, now those arteries were able to bleed out. As long as the axle was on, it had all those arteries pinched off. But as soon as he took it off, now it's able to bleed out. So I'm internally bleeding. So as soon as he took it off my body, this incredible weakness is the only way I can describe it. So I had this horrible pain, but now he took the truck up off my body, and I don't even know how to, like, I don't have words. This is incredible weakness. I don't even know what to say. But that was because I was just pumping all my blood into my belly. And so I was afraid the jack was going to slip. I afraid it was going to fall on me. So I'm begging him to get me out from right there. Most people have been told you don't want to move someone with a back injury. He could see the flat spot, so he knew I probably had a broken back. So he's like, I'm not going to touch you. The emergency people are on their way. I'm panicking. I'm freaking out, thinking it's going to fall on me again. So I reached out back behind my head. I grabbed the bottom of the bumper, took everything I had, but I dragged myself out this far with the broken creeper. There's wheels on the end, so the ends rolled easy, but the middle, it's flat. So I pulled, I dragged myself out, and then I looked underneath, and then the bumper is like maybe right here with just the shoulders and arms sticking out from underneath the truck. And I look underneath the truck, and now jack slip's just going to fall on my legs and break my legs. So I thought all I have to do is just do one more push and straight, put my hands on the bumper and straight on my arms. And then if it falls, it'll miss my legs and I'll be good. Because I kept thinking it was going to fall again. And when I tried to do that second push, that's when I realized a couple things. First thing, I looked down, I was watching. I had a short sleeve work uniform, and I was watching my arm, and it was shaking so fast. It was like in a blur. Like it was just this crazy, I don't know. It was just shaking so fast. It was like in a blur. And when I saw that, it terrified me because at that time in my life, I had a lot of upper body strength. I could have, I mean, a lot of pull-ups, whatever. I could have done whatever I wanted. And I couldn't even do this little thing, and it was freaking me out. And I was watching my arm just shaking and jumping like that. And I was trying to push and I didn't have the strength. And that is also right when I realized I was not able to breathe. My lungs had both been collapsed, the diaphragm pushed up, and I was struggling for breath, but it just got worse and worse. And pretty soon, as I was watching my arm shaking, I hear myself. I'm doing this. I'm doing the trying to suck in that next breath, and I got in a couple, but it was like I couldn't get. I finally got the one that I couldn't get in the next breath, and I'm trying so hard to get that next breath. And sometimes when you're really active, running, working out, whatever, and you can hear your own pulse. So my pulse is just pounding in my ear because I'm in shock. My heart rate is way elevated, and I can hear my heart just pounding away as I'm trying to get this next breath. And it was the weirdest thing because I literally heard my heart shut off or stop, just like it reminded me exactly like when you shut off a big industrial engine. And when you're standing next to a car, you really can't, but if you're standing next to some kind of industrial engine right next to the engine and you shut it off, in the work that I did, I could literally hear the engine stop, like bup, 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 bup. And I heard my heart bup, 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 bup. And at the last beat of my heart, just like an engine that got shut off, my spirit left my body and I went into the roof of the garage at like 14, 15, 16 feet just inside the roof. And I went from this, the most pain I've ever felt, crushed in half. Now I'm in the roof of the ceiling, and it was uh, like the Bible talks about peace that surpasses mental understanding. Again, I don't have words to try and describe how good it felt. The only thing I say over and over, it's kind of corny, but I say I was having a party in the ceiling by myself. And I don't know how else to describe it. I was out there. It's the peace I've wanted my whole life. Literally. I mean, it's what I've wanted my whole life. And so I'm up there just enjoying this amazing piece, looking down an accident scene, so completely removed from it that I didn't even know that I was the guy underneath the truck. Um, Nothing. I'm just watching down from above, and I was listening to all the conversations because the volunteer fire department people had showed up like onesie twosies in their own vehicles and stuff, and I'm just watching from above, listening to all the conversations. And because I had a massive chest injury, they weren't going to do CPR. At this point, no heartbeat, no pulse. I've passed. I'm looking down from above, but I don't know it's me. Leonard, the other mechanic, like I said, I've known him since I was little, and early teens. He's on his knees. He's running his fingers through my hair, but I didn't know it was me. And I could hear him crying and apologizing. And he's saying stuff like, "I should be the one that's dead, not you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm such an old fool," because he had not used the safety equipment. And he's saying, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should be the one." And I didn't feel bad at all. I mean, I could hear him crying. I was listening to him cry and hearing what he was saying to the person that he's touching, but I didn't feel bad. I mean, it didn't. I was in such perfect peace; it didn't bother me. And I'm listening to all the conversations, the people talking and stuff. And on each side of Leonard, all of a sudden, not at first, but all of a sudden, it just like I don't know how to describe it, but all of a sudden, on each side of Leonard, I could see that there was an angel. And Leonard is like 6'1", 6'2", and they're on their knees. Leonard is on his knees. There's one on each side of him, just like him. So 3 across the front of this truck with Leonard in the middle, angel on each side of him. And like I said, he's just over 6 feet tall, but their heads were like a couple feet taller than his. So I'm gonna guesstimate, like let's say 8 feet tall if you would have stood him up, based on a 6 foot tall Leonard. Angels in white shining robes. Angels are mentioned in the Bible. I've looked it up 290 sometimes. Sometimes, a handful of times, it mentions their white shining robes. And these angels had white shining robes. I mean, they're like emanating light. Sometimes angels have wings. Sometimes they don't. These angels did not have wings. They were men. I didn't get to see their faces, but looking from above in the back, obviously men, big, broad shoulders, very muscular, narrow waist, long hair. And when I share this testimony at churches, sometimes I'll say, look, I know sometimes religious people or church folks get weird about guys with long hair. I think you're going to be surprised when you get to heaven because I saw two really long haired guys, and I'm pretty sure God made them that way. So these two long haired are on each side of Leonard, and the one from the driver's side reaches over and he puts his hands in the middle of the flat spot, and the one from the passenger side did the same thing. So from above, I see it and I go, look, those angels are down there to help that guy. That's nice. I mean, it seemed, it's so weird because it seemed nonchalant. It seemed normal. It didn't seem out of the ordinary. I've contemplated that so many times the last 18 years. The only thing that makes any sense to me is that because in the spirit realm, angels are normal. That's why it didn't seem like a big deal to me. It's because, so anyway, I'm just watching above. I could see the angels helping that guy. I'm like, yeah, they're down there helping the guy. Big deal. Listening to the conversations of the emergency people, and uh, up above, looking down, angels on each side, and there was a big guy on the left side, so the passenger's corner of the truck, in what I call farmer bibs, the light colored bibs with the dark blue stripes. And he's a big guy, and his arms crossed, a little guy next to him. And the last two people that came to the scene of the accident, first of all, was the only woman. There's only one woman, and she had red hair. Her name's Shannon. And then there was one gray haired guy. So only one woman and one gray haired guy. And the first eight people came through the front door. My spirit is above watching, listening, just paying attention. But number 9 and 10 that showed up, the last two people that came, was Shannon and this older guy. And they came in the wrong door. They came in the back door of the shop. The front door of the shop is in the front. It goes out the blacktop driveway to the road. I'm just going to stop here and say, a year later, over a year later, when I got out of the hospital, I went to that volunteer fire department to tell them thank you. The only person that knew I was coming was the chief. They have a once a month meeting. He held me off a room off to the side. They started their meeting. He brought me out. So there's like 30 people in this room. They have no idea who I am. I went around the room. This is over a year later. I went around the room and I picked out 8 of the 10 people out of 30 people that came to my accident scene. And I was like, you were there, you were there, you were there. But
Wow.
the best part was the last two, uh, like 7 and 8, because I couldn't get full 10, but like 7 and 8 would have, the last two people that came to the scene of the accident was the red haired guy, or red haired lady and the gray haired guy. And I said to them in the group, you were the last two people to come, and you came in the wrong door. Why? And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, everybody came to the front door. You came in the back door. And they looked at each other like, what are you? It had been over a year. They had to think about it, talk about it. And then they remembered. They said, oh, yeah, because they were riding together apparently. They drove by, missed. They saw the flashing lights and stuff and said, oh, that's where it is. And there's a secondary gravel driveway that came to the back of the shop, they said. So they just caught that driveway, and that's why they came in the back door, the wrong door. And it's this little detail, but you know what it does? It proves that the real Bruce was in the ceiling, because at that point, no heartbeat, no pulse, 6, 8, 10 minutes, depending on who you believe in the volunteer fire department. So I'm watching from above. Shannon, this other guy, comes in the back door, the wrong door. She gets down between the angels. She's feeling for a pulse. She couldn't find one. And the big guy in farmer bibs on the pastor's corner says to her, still has his arms crossed. He says it's too late. He's already passed. She's frantically feeling for a pulse. She can't find one. He's saying it's too late. She's ignoring him. And then she says, what's his name? And Leonard is on the driver's corner as I'm looking down from above, and Leonard says, Bruce Fenton. And I watch this lady, the red-haired lady, and she starts doing this to the guy. Bruce Fenton, come back, come back. And the only way I could describe it is every time she said Bruce Fenton, it just sounded kind of familiar. And that's the only, I mean, I wouldn't have said, oh, it's me, it's my name. Mm-mm. I just, I know it sounds weird, but all I could say is it sounded familiar. And so my spirit started creeping down slowly, 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 slowly. And it seemed like when I was about halfway, it went really fast. It, I don't know, it felt like my spirit came in through the top of my head. My heart miraculously starts. No CPR, no medicine. My heart miraculously starts. What I didn't know was that this woman, Shannon, was a 2-month, 38-year-old woman who was a 2-month-old baby Christian, who somebody told her just read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John at home. So she's been reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John at home for the last 2 months. And she prayed me back to life. I didn't know it at the time, but so she prays me back to life. My spirit comes back in my body. So I go from feeling the best I have ever felt to now feeling the worst I've ever felt. And this horrible, horrible pain that I can't describe hits me when I come back in. And right when that pain hit, when my heart starts and my spirit came back in my body, it was like I saw a it was like a Rolodex. Remember how when as a kid you could make cartoons by making uh, a picture and then change the picture and change the
Yep.
picture and then do that.
Yep.
I know that sounds weird, but that's kind of like what I saw in my head of the accident. And I was like, I saw it and I was like, oh no, I'm the guy under the truck. It was me. It happened to me. I'm because from above I didn't know it was me, but now I'm back on my body. I'm like, oh no, it's me. I'm the guy under the truck. And I literally said, oh, four-letter word that means fertilizer on the guy that's underneath the truck. And it's me, and it hurt so bad. And I was like, I remember just saying, no, it hurts too bad. I don't want this. I don't want this. And when I said, I don't want this, my heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went back into the roof of the garage. I'm back in perfect peace. I can look from above again. I see the two angels. I see the lady, Shannon, in the middle. I could see it all below me. But this time, what changed was a tunnel opened up going out of the roof of the garage at like maybe a 45-degree angle. It was a million miles long, and there was a bright light on the end of the tunnel. And I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew heaven was on the end of the tunnel, and I knew Jesus was there waiting for me. There wasn't a question. It wasn't a doubt. It wasn't maybe. It was like I knew it with every fiber that I had. And so I got in the tunnel, and I was going away at a high rate of speed, very fast, towards Jesus, towards heaven, excited. And I don't know why, but I feel like I was halfway there when I heard behind me, Bruce and I come back. I got stopped. My spirit got stopped. I got sucked backwards out of the tunnel, and I'm back in the roof of the garage. I'm looking down. I can see the angels. I can see the lady, and my spirit goes back inside my body. Again, I come back in, horrible, horrible pain. And I looked on my left and my right for the angels, but I couldn't see them with my earth eyes, which really, really scared me. And I couldn't make sense of why God would send the angels, but then take them away when I really needed them because they hurt so bad. And I'm just looking at like nothing. I'm looking, there's nothing there. And I'm going, where are they, God? Why'd you take the angels? And it was in that moment where I'm saying, God, why'd you take the angels away? And it's in this horrible pain and confusion. So now these people are running. They've been standing around quietly talking until this lady prays me back to life. And now my eyes pop up. Now they're all scrambling around. And I don't even know what they were saying, but they're all scrambling around. And so in that commotion and chaos, I closed my eyes and I heard God speak to me. And the first thing that struck me was he was completely calm. Everybody else was freaking out, including me. But this was like the epitome of calmness. And he just said very quietly, calmly, if you want to live, you're going to have to fight. And it's going to be a hard fight. And I thought about, like, I say, like 2.2 seconds. And I literally said, screw it. I don't want to fight. It hurts. I'm done. And when I said, screw it, I don't want to fight. It hurts too much. My heart stopped. My spirit left my body. I went back in the roof of the garage. And I looked from above and I could see the angels again that I just couldn't see with my earth eyes. And the tunnel opened up and I knew Jesus was there waiting for me. And I got in the tunnel going away, happy to meet him again. Fast. It was in a fast car towards the end. Again, I felt like I was about halfway there. Again, I hear Bruce and I come back. Again, I get sucked backwards. I can see the tunnel. I can see the light. I'm back in the roof. I can see the angels. I can see here again. My spirit comes back in that third and final time. And when my spirit came back in that last time, her face was right here. I'm still in the creeper. I'm still laying on the creeper. Her face is right here. And she said to me, Mister, you're on the verge of life and death. And I remember thinking to her, yeah, lady, you have no idea. Because my spirit's going in and out. You have no idea what you're saying. And then she said, what do you have to fight for? She said, do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Do you have anything to fight for? Because you have to fight. And up until that exact moment, I had completely forgotten that I was married. It hadn't crossed my mind that I had 4 little kids. Nothing, because the pain was so overwhelming and intense. And when she said that, not later, but right in that moment, I knew that I knew that I knew that I knew God, the Holy Spirit, was speaking through this woman to me to remind me of my wife and my kids so that I would fight. Because it was up to me, that's what I wanted my whole life, and that's where I would have gone, and
Hmm.
I wouldn't have come back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
God had to use her to remind me about Lori and the kids so that I'd fight for them. So then she said, do you have a wife? Do you have kids? Do you have anything to fight for? I thought of Lori and the kids. And she kept saying, don't close your eyes. You're leaving. Every time you close your eyes, you're leaving. Keep your eyes open. And I was fighting so hard to keep my eyes open. And they ended up, uh, they, they called MedFlight, but then they forgot to call an ambulance. So MedFlight came, MedFlight left. Then the ambulance came, picked me up, took me to a hospital like half an hour away, 20 minutes away. Then the helicopter came back from our states biggest trauma center, picked me up at that hospital, which is only there like 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, it was just literally long enough there for that helicopter to come back and pick me up. And then they med flighted me to our state's trauma center, biggest trauma center. And like I said, lots of surgeries. I ended up, I've spent more than a year in the hospital. Um, they say doctors have said, I don't make the claim, I repeat it obviously, but I don't, I'm not the one that cooked it up. But doctors said they compared my case against studies that were done about the number of arteries severed versus mortality rate, and they make the claim that I'm the only one they can find that's lived with having
Wow.
major arteries severed in 5 places. So
Wow.
there's that, and then right below your belly button, I don't have, like I said, I don't really have one anymore, but below your belly button is where all your small intestines are. And when the truck fell on me, all my small intestines were like destroyed, crushed. You need at that time, and so this changed, I found, but at that time in 2006, the magic number was 100 centimeters. Why in metric? I don't know, but they said you had to have at least 100 centimeters to live. That's what the thoughts, that's what the doctors told us at the time. So all my small intestines were crushed. And doctors say the average for an adult is you have 18 to 20 some feet length of small intestine. So mine was all crushed, but they needed to save like 2 or 3 feet. So they saved two pieces that have been damaged, but they were the least damaged. And they sewed those two pieces together. So I have some small intestine. They kept it unhooked. They had blood supply, but not hooked up. Anyway, so I had a plastic tube that would come out and just go into a bucket, so I couldn't eat for months. It was literally unhooked so that it was try to heal. Then one of those pieces died. One of the two pieces they tried to save died. So I was under the 100 centimeters. I lost 65 pounds. If you saw me 65
Wow.
pounds less than I am, I looked like somebody straight out of a concentration camp. I'm literally starving to die in the hospital. And that's when God woke up a guy on the other side of the United States in New York 2 mornings in a row at 5 a.m., told him, buy a plane ticket, fly to Wisconsin and pray for me. And if he would, God would do a miracle. He blew it off the first morning, told his wife, told his pastor, but didn't do it the first morning. The second day when God woke him up, he did it. Bought the ticket for 900 some bucks. Came, some people from my church brought him to the hospital a couple hours away where I was med flighted to. The guy prayed for me, and when he did, he literally laid his hands on my forehead, and he began to pray, and I literally felt the power of God, electricity come out of his hand into my intestines, and I could feel my intestines coming back. Doctors say I have approximately half my intestines now, so I had a creative miracle where God gave me back.
Wow.
They say I have 9 to 11 feet of intestine. They say it's too. The word they use was circuitous, like a ball of worms. So it's really hard to measure the exact length, but they can
Uh-huh.
guesstimate, and they say guesstimation I have approximately half. And they knew that I had less than
Wow.
100 centimeters, and now that I got approximately half, which would be, I think, if my forgive me if my math is wrong, but I think it was like that made it 600 centimeters for a full length, something like that, if I remember right. But either way, I've got 9 to 11 feet, so half my
What?
intestine. That's the creative
S-
miracle part.
Yeah, so like that's not something that happens.
No, it does
It's
not happen ever.
yeah,
The only time they say it could ever grow back, small intestines, is if you were a child, you're still in your growth stages, and you had something happen to your intestine. You could, it could grow and kind of grow out
sure.
because you're still in growing stage. But as an adult, you're done. It's not going to
Right.
grow.
Wow. And this man who came to pray for you, was he connected to you at all?
I had met him one time on vacation. My pastor, that used to be the pastor at the church where my wife worked, left our church. He was a really good friend of mine, my pastor, and he moved to New York and was being a pastor at a church in New York. So after the accident happened, my wife called them and everybody else to put me on prayer chains. So he gets up Sunday morning and tells his congregation, "Hey, look, a old friend of mine from Wisconsin had a bad accident. We need to pray for him." And it was after that God woke up one of the members in his congregation and said, "I want you to go pray for him." So, and I
Wow.
had met the guy one time on vacation when we went out and visited Pastor Ryan.
Wow. Well, thank God he was obedient to God's calling for that.
I
That's
have
amazing.
thought about that and talked about that a lot, and I honestly think, because we see this in the Bible sometimes, I honestly think that if he wouldn't have come, I'd be dead. I mean, I was going to die, but what I'm saying is, I don't think God was going to send somebody else. In the Bible, sometimes God tells somebody, look, go do this. And if they don't do it, he sends somebody else and it just gets done because he wants it done. But then there's those weird times in the Bible where he says, go do it. And if it doesn't get done, it doesn't happen. I think it was one of those for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I think it was one of
Sure.
those that if he wasn't going to do it, it wasn't going to happen, but he did it.
Sure. Wow. Praise
And you know what?
God.
Before I forget, I'm going to stand up
Yeah. Yeah.
so you can kind of see. I don't know, maybe you can see, but from the bottom of my rib cage, it goes all the way down to my pelvic. They went through this hole 5 times like I said, I don't have a belly button anymore. I've got this, you can see side view. I got this
Hmm.
hernia where I used to have a belly button. This is all
Sure.
net. This is a big net, L-shaped net, and the only spot that's not netted is right here, and that's because they had to leave an access
Wow.
point in case for future operations in case they needed so. But either way,
Okay.
yeah, that
Wow.
was all from what the doctors did, all the scarring. Because when it fell in me, it never cut a hole in me. It just was all internal, just
Okay.
crush injury
Wow. And then Shannon, the firefighter, was she praying out loud or was she praying in her head?
in her head, and all she was doing was slapping me in the face, saying, "Bruce Vanetta," commanding me to open my eyes. So when we got out of the hospital, met her and her husband and their kids, and they came to our house here, and we did a cookout a couple times just to kind of get to know
Mhm.
them and whatever. I, I had questions for her, like, what made you think that you can do that when you don't believe in Jesus? That's a pretty, I hate to say the word ballsy, but that's a pretty gutsy thing to do, right?
Yes.
And it's like,
Yes.
what made you do that? And she said, somebody told her to read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. At the time, she said she had just read John 14:12, where Jesus said, something along the lines of, those who believe in me will do the same things I'm doing. In fact, greater things we do. And she said, she showed up seeing the accident. She's like, well, Jesus prayed people to life, back to life. I've read it. Other disciples said, so why not? And she just believed it. I mean, it was just like this blind
Hmm.
faith that she could do it. And
Yep.
her act of faith with the Mark 11, where Jesus said, speak to the mountain with a faith of mustard seed, it'll be thrown in the sea. That's what the slap was. She was speaking to my
Okay.
spirit, and she was commanding my spirit to come back in the name of Jesus. All I was hearing was Bruce Vanna, come back, come back. But because she apparently that part she was keeping. She was out loud. Everybody heard her because when
Right.
she was saying, Bruce Vanna, open your eyes, come back, after it already passed for several minutes. Watching from above, I watched. Everybody looked at her like she's crazy. They were all talking until she started doing that, and they all stopped talking and turned their head and looked like, crazy lady, what are you doing? And she kept getting more louder and louder and more emphatic. And then I came back in. So, like I said, I asked her why, and she said, well, she read John 14:12, and so it was definitely interesting. I just spoke with her recently because she just was. They're doing another thing on my story for TV, and they just were interviewing her like a couple weeks ago, and it's crazy, but she just lost somebody in her family to a car accident that happened in front of her, and she tried praying
Wow.
them back to life, and it wasn't God's plan.
Sure.
So it's just interesting,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
praise me,
That is
God uses her to pray
interesting.
me back to life, but then she goes to pray for
Hmm.
somebody that she loves, and it doesn't work. You know what I mean? So it's like
Right.
God's sovereign.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. It shows God's sovereign and it shows that we do have power when it's God's will, like we need to follow what he's guiding us to do. And she sounds very faithful in that she followed God's lead in praying you back and it's so important that we are obedient to
Yeah,
God.
I'm not gonna say that God told her to try and pray the second one back to life, but I think because she had
Sure.
done it and seen it, she
Hmm.
thought, "Oh, I'll just do it
She
again."
thought, yes,
You know
yes,
what I mean? So it's that verse in the Bible that says the same power that raised Christ from the dead lives inside of us.
yes,
That's the
yes.
Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, wow, so amazing. So how did your family find out about the accident? Did your wife get a phone call
Yeah,
or how did that
because
work?
we had been family friends. I grew up that the people, like I said, I worked on that guy's truck as a little kid, so they didn't even know my wife or my house number, but they knew my parents instant. So they just immediately called my mom. My mom turned on and called Lori, and that's my mom called Lori to tell her, that something bad had happened. So. And at that point, they didn't expect me to live. They told her that I wasn't going to live, is what they had said. That they rushed me to the hospital, but they didn't expect that I was going to make it.
Was your family praying for you when they found out or
Oh yeah,
did they?
I mean, yeah, for sure. My wife and my mom and some people from church got in a car, drove the 2.5 hours south of here to come to the hospital, and the doctor came out. The head of the trauma department was home, got called in from home to take over my operation, because he's the head guy. So they called him in from home. Somebody else started the operation. Two other guys started the operation. He took it over. He came out and he told my wife he didn't expect me to live through the hour. He said, I've never seen a body. He said, I've been the head of this trauma department, biggest one in our state. And he said, I've never seen a body so badly traumatized and the person make it to the hospital alive. He said to my wife, your husband must have one hell of a will to fight. He said, but I don't expect him to live through the hour. That's what they told my wife. And that was
Mm,
after they'd done the initial surgeries just to hook up the arteries. And so one of the guys from church heard the doctor say that. And so he stepped up and the doctor said, so cross your fingers. My wife said, I'm not crossing my fingers. I'm going to pray. And
Mhm.
so then the guy from church heard what the doctor said about the hour. And so it's actually Jim, Deacon Jim. He said, you know what? He said he's not going to live for an hour. Then let's give God thanks for every 30 minutes. And so
Mm.
the rest of the night, every 30 minutes I was alive, they gathered in a circle and said, God, thank you for 30 more minutes of life. And they did
Oh,
it all
wow.
night long. And the next morning, I'm still alive. The doctor comes back in, shocked to find me still alive. There's a whole bunch more operations that need to be done. My wife's like, go ahead and start doing the operations. He's like, no way. He can't tolerate it. And she hassled him again a couple times. And about noon that next day, 11 or 12 that next day, she told him, look, do it. You said the operations need to be done. Just do it. We're believing in God. If he dies, it's God's will. If he doesn't, it's God's will. Just do it. So they operated on me on and off for a week. They kept me in a induced coma for a long time, but they operated on and off that whole week. And then I was in a induced coma for a long time. And the crazy thing, when they tried to take me out of my coma, I'd been in it for induced coma. I was in it so long that my lungs wouldn't it wouldn't work. So they tried to
Mhm.
take me out of the coma and trying to get me to breathe, but my lungs wouldn't work, which was really, really scary. Because I remember it, because they all freaked out. I mean, because they wouldn't work, so they had to what they call reintubate me, do it over,
Uh,
and it's this
yeah.
big hassle, and they don't want me to die, obviously. So everybody's running around freaking out. But when they finally did get me out of my coma, and I was able to, I was before I could talk, and I still had the breathing tube. When I kind of like they're trying to like wake me up, the first thing I wanted to do, the very first thing I do was want to tell my wife and my mom was there, my brother. I want to tell them I'd seen these angels. So I motioned. I kept trying to talk, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't talk because I had these tubes. And then I motioned for something to write with, and they gave me a pen or pencil, whatever it was. And I was just gonna write the word angel. That's all I was gonna do. I couldn't make the A come from my brain to my hand. 6 months
Oh.
before I could read or write again. I was
Oh.
so mad. I was like, I just want to tell them about the angels. And it's so weird because they seem so like a nonchalant thing when I watched it in person from above or in spirit. But after I came back, I was like, when they did take the tube out of me and I could breathe, I remember my brother Luke was there and my wife was there that day. And the first thing they can tell you, and the nurse, the first thing I said was, you should have seen the two angels I saw you guys. It was like they were like 8 feet tall and they're glowing, they're big, and I just kept going on and on. So it was
Yeah.
like that was the first thing when I came out of the coma. First thing I told anybody was about the angels. The doctor is like an atheist. He didn't believe me. I'm like, I don't care, dude. I'm telling you, I saw two 8 feet tall angels. You told me nobody else has lived. I'm telling you why. This is the reason why. So,
That's amazing. So cool. Yeah, what was the doctor's reaction to your small intestine growing back and just
um,
all your healing?
so I had 5 major operations. My fifth and final last operation was in December of '07. The accident happened in November of '06. So it's now been a year and a month. I had a rib that would never grow back. It just kept clunking around in there. They kept trying to make it stick and it never would. So the last operation, I'm going to take the rib out and throw it away. My gallbladder got destroyed from intravenous feeding because I was intravenous feeding too long. So it destroyed my gallbladder. They're going to take that out, throw it away. They were going to clean up some scar tissue and adhesions. So basically, it was this last fifth operation was just like a cleanup operation, throw away the rib, take out the gallbladder, take out the adhesions, do this cleanup work. I go in, obviously I'm sedated, but I was told by one of the nurses that were in the room and one of the other doctors in the room that when he cut me open, the accident happened in November. When that guy came and prayed, the creative miracle happened before my last operation. So when the doctor cut me open and he saw half my intestines there that he knew he had removed, and he's an atheist, and they actually say he's a genius. They literally call the guy a genius. Um, they said, I was told by one of the doctors and nurses in the room, they said that when he saw it with his own eyes, he threw a scalpel across the room and began to scream and swear and had a total meltdown, turned away from my body and just had like a temper tantrum meltdown because he's so smart. He knew that he knew that he knew that was impossible. He knew it was impossible. And so he freaked out. And instead of like being uh, in awe, he was angry. And he just had this meltdown. They said he calmed himself down, turned around like nothing happened. He said, fresh scalpel. And they gave him another scalpel and he went back to work. But I know I mean, it's obviously he saw those intestines that he knew he had cut out. He had been in there 4 times, not laparoscopically, wide open. He knew he removed. He knew there was just one little piece left. He knew that was the reason I was
Mhm.
starving to death. And all of a sudden now I got 9 to 11 feet of intestine. He's like, he knew it came out of
Mhm.
nowhere. He was
Wow.
interviewed by History Channel, and when he was interviewed by History Channel, he told them that was he's no longer an atheist, and that was the first time he knew that he knew that he knew something outside of this world was at work. He said he wasn't
Okay.
going to put a name on it like Jesus or anything like that at that point. He said, but I knew that I knew that I knew something supernatural. I don't know what other word he used. Something that was
Mhm.
not normal happened, and it was
Mhm.
staring at him face to face. So
Wow. Well, God's working on his heart. I'll be praying for him. So many miracles have come out of your story, so that's pretty cool.
yeah.
So, tell me about what you are up to now. So, after you got out of the hospital, did you go back to work as normal, or what happened to your life at that point?
Um. Yeah. Well, I'd been called to ministry as a young person when I was like 19, and I ran away from God my whole life. Um. So yeah, I needed money, and I was thinking, man, I should just go back to work. And I was being a really bad. It was between my fourth and fifth. It was actually between my fourth and fifth operation, and I was such a bad. I'd been in the hospital for like almost a year, and I was such a bad patient because I'm like type A and I can't hold still. I like literally just I'm just wound tight kind of guy, and I was just being belligerent. And I just kept saying, "You guys got to let me out of here. You can't keep me here forever." I got, it's getting really nasty. And finally, the doctor said, "All right, if I let you go home between this operation and the next operation, and we have the nurses come care for you at home for like a couple weeks or something, will you just get your attitude right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, send me home and I'll get my attitude right." Well, they sent me home. I've got IVs, and I went back to work. I mean, I couldn't physically work, but I had my truck and all my tools, and I had all this work lined up with all these big customers. And they said, "We don't need you to work. We just need your brain. You show up and you tell our guys what to do, and we'll pay you the same as what we paid you before." And so I went back to work for a couple of weeks, and I made this insane amount of money, more than I'd ever made before. And anyway, yeah, I got a spanking from God over that, and he ended up. He's like, "No, tell those people you're no longer working for them. You're working for me now." So we started the ministry. Actually, we started it while I was still in the hospital after that last operation. We started officially January 1st, 2008. And me and my wife travel around. I share just what we did right now, share this testimony. And bottom line, it's this I know who I am. I know that my last name means trouble in this town, from my grandpa to my dad to me and my brothers. I know that I don't deserve anything that God has done. Mercy means not getting the punishment we deserve. And when people have asked me, why did God save me? Only one reason: as a spectacle of mercy. That's it. That's all it is.
Glory to God. Amazing. And how old are your kids now?
Um, Oldest daughter 27, twin boys 26, and youngest 24 and a half.
Okay. So yeah, they grew up with seeing your story, with being with you through your healing and seeing what God can do in your life.
It cost two of them to go into full-time ministry.
I would imagine something like that might happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
two of
that's
the
really
four are in
cool.
full-time ministry. Yeah,
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah, it is cool. It's great to see.
So cool. So how can people connect with you and your ministry?
Oh, sweetbreadministries.com is our website, and they can. There's phone number there. They could call our ministry, reach out that way. We're always looking for places for God to open doors for us to just share this testimony like we did today. So, just want to encourage people that there are no perfect Christians. There's no perfect people. God loves us no matter how messed up we are, no matter how much trouble us or our family has been in. There's nothing that's too far gone. There's God's a God of love, and He's a God of forgiveness. He's a God of mercy and grace. He's a God of second chances and third chances and fourth chances. And if it was like baseball, he wouldn't strike out just because he just keeps pitching.
It's such a good reminder. We get so caught up in our shame and our sin, and we feel unworthy, and we forget that God is a God of mercy and a God of love. And
Amen.
that's a good analogy. He never stops pitching to
He
us. Yeah.
doesn't. He doesn't. And he keeps encouraging, like, swing. You can do this. You can do this. Come on. That's what he does.
Yeah, I made you for more. You can do
You
this.
can do this. Yeah. Even when we feel like we can't. Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sure you've, yeah, felt like that many a time that you can't do it.
Daily. Yeah.
And so now you're like physically doing well, right?
Oh, I struggle with digestive issues is about it since the accident. But as far as like they said I was going to be on, this is how bad it was. They said I would be on fentanyl pain patches the rest of my life because of all the horrific injuries. I'm not. They said I was going to have to get shots every month for all, vitamins and all this stuff. I don't. About the only thing I deal with at this point is diarrhea. I've had diarrhea for 18 years, since the accident. So that's it. Which, I mean, it can be taxing and makes it hard for travel and
Right.
ministry and lots of stuff, but
Yeah, yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, thank you. Thank you for boldly sharing your testimony and not running from God and his call for you to do that. And I'm sure it's emotionally taxing to go through it over and over again. And I really appreciate it. And I pray that this episode reaches many and that people will walk away just remembering exactly what you said, that God is merciful and he loves you and he is here to change your life, to do something with your life, and you're never too far gone to be God's child. So don't run away from him. Seek him.
Excellent. Natalie, thanks for allowing me to share this testimony with you and your audience.